and roll in 3, 2, 1. Well, Chief Bliven, welcome to this Monday feature here at WSAU, WSAU.com. Appreciate you joining us here on short notice.
Yeah, you bet. It's my pleasure to be here.
Yeah, and you know, it's part of your job. You know, you're the face of the department for the community of Wausau. And so here we are. And we're going to kind of talk about maybe some things that go on behind the scenes here for the people that you're protecting on a daily basis might not know about, because there's obviously it's a very important job that you do on a daily basis here at the department.
Yeah, I mean, I think policing in general is an important job. It's our role to keep the community safe and to serve the public and to solve problems, and so I appreciate that. Yeah, we're all in on solving problems and making our community better. And
obviously one issue that came up in the month of February, and it's something that we actually still haven't gotten resolution on yet, was the officer-involved shooting that happened on, correct me if I'm wrong, it was the north side of Wausau near the MTC campus. Just give us an idea of kind of where we're at in that process, what you know, what you can say so far as that goes.
Sure. So January 16th was the officer-involved shooting up at Urban West, and so as we talked about in my press conference and in some social media updates since that time, the initial phase is the Division of Criminal Investigation, which is a law enforcement agency run by the Department of Justice in Wisconsin. They are the agency that runs the investigation and does the investigation. So this is a criminal investigation to determine if there are any criminal charges that should come from the incident that happened at the Urban West Apartments, and that that's what initially transpired. The Division of Criminal Investigation did that investigation. It's a lengthy report, is my understanding, and they went through all of our body cam footage and all of our squad video footage. They did lots of interviews of police officers, deputy sheriffs, and people that were in that area at the time of the incident, and so they've comprised their investigation, and they've turned that investigation over to the Marathon County District Attorney, and so now the District Attorney is in review of that investigation, and it's her responsibility to determine whether or not there's any reason for criminal charges to be filed. And so typically what happens is the District Attorney will give a timeline of approximately 30 days to get through that investigation and make a determination as to criminal charges. So my expectation is this month sometime the District Attorney will be able to come out publicly and give the community information about the investigation and what her determination is in regards to that.
And what I'm hearing here is, this investigation from, the moment that you determined that it was an officer-involved shooting to the process that we're going through right now has not necessarily been handled by the Wausau Police Department. And I'm guessing there's a reason for that. It's probably best for somebody from the outside to take a look in, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, first and foremost is it's Wisconsin statute. So it's regulated by the state of Wisconsin that any officer-involved death investigation be completed by an agency other than the one that caused the death of the individual. So, usually we think of that in terms of an officer-involved shooting, but that could be, a pursuit that leads to a crash that leads to a person's death. That would also be an officer-involved death investigation, and that would be have to be investigated by an external police agency. And the purpose of that is just to make sure that that it's impartial, that it's thorough, that there isn't any impropriety on the part of the agency that caused the death of somebody. So that's the purpose behind it, and we wouldn't have to have the Division of Criminal Investigation do that investigation, but in my opinion, they're the experts in the state. They have done the lion's share of officer-involved shooting investigations around the state of Wisconsin, and they're very, very good at it. They have a tremendous amount of resources to bring to bear, whether that is agents in the form of coming here and doing interviews and doing the investigation from an interview perspective, but also relationships with Wisconsin Crime Lab and those types of other agencies. So they're the ones that come in and do that investigation for us.
And then the officers that have been involved, of course, they've been on leave since the incident back in January. Give us an idea of what resources you've made available to them, because obviously this is something that, no matter what happens from the investigation, this is something that those individuals do have to carry.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that is something that is often overlooked, and if you've paid attention to our social media pages, I have put a fair amount of information out there in terms of the investigation itself, but also in terms of resources given to officers that are involved in these types of incidents. And I think it's, police officer wellness is something that is often overlooked, in terms of discussions in the aftermath of these types of incidents. We get into this job because we love our communities. We want to help people. We want to be of service to people. We recognize that people aren't calling us because it's their birthday. People are calling us because they're having a really tough day. Bad things are happening to them, and we're willing to respond and to help people in those situations. But that doesn't mean that because we signed up to do this job and to be there on people's bad days that it's easy for us to navigate the emotional and mental trauma that we experience in this career. So studies indicate that the average police officer in the course of their career are exposed to more than 200 critical incidents. And so that the trauma exposure for people in law enforcement is significant. And so it's really, really imperative that we give our police officers as much resources as we can. First and foremost, I think we owe it to them, because they are on the front lines doing this really difficult work, and we want them to be in a good mental place, right? Mm-hmm. Because if they're not in a good place because of the trauma they've experienced, then they're not going to be at their best. They're not going to be problem solvers. They'll be less compassionate, and that's what we need from our police officers. So we owe it to them, but I think more than that, we owe it to our families. We owe it to our citizens to have people at their best when they're out there responding. So what those resources consist of, we asked a certified licensed counselor to come in and meet with them the day after the shooting. That person came over from the Chippewa Valley. She was here. She met with all of our staff that were involved on an individual basis, and then has been in touch with them numerous times since the shooting. That person also led our critical incident stress debrief, and so that is something that is done in a group setting, and it's very taxing for the person that's doing and leading that debrief, but it's a really critical piece for everybody that was involved to kind of understand the perspectives of others and try to put the pieces together for themselves and what transpired there. And so those touch points are really important for our police officers to kind of get to a point of normalcy. I mean, in the immediate aftermath of that shooting, I mean, they experience a lot of they experience sleeplessness, loss of appetite, all of those types of things, and it's just really imperative that we get them the support they need. And to this point, I think we've done that. That isn't to say that it's something that they've forgotten and moved on from, because it's still very, very new, even though it's been a month and a half. So we'll continue to provide them resources, and I think they know that whatever it is they think they need, we'll give to them.
Well, we will certainly look forward and see what comes of this. Again, you said later this month we'll get the reports, and we'll find out just exactly what the final results are from this, and we'll look forward to seeing what transpires from that, and of course continue to keep those impacted in our thoughts as well.
Yeah, you bet. And the other piece is I've put a lot of information out on social media to communicate to our public, to our community, and I think that's a really important piece, because I'm not the person that's doing the investigation, and because it's under investigation, I don't have a lot of detail into what transpired. I have some, but it's really, if there's no communication, then the community is kind of sitting there wondering what's happening, what's happened in the last month and a half or 2 months. And so I think it's important that people understand, the things that the officers have gone through, that they understand why DCI is doing the investigation, what that investigation comprise is, was comprised of, what type of administrative review, all those things. So I just think that the more we can communicate with our community, the better connection we can have, and the more trust we can build.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's another thing that we noticed from the Wausau Police Department in the last few years. I mean, there's really been a big effort, whether it's the lighthearted picture of the dog that crawled up into the engine of one of your vehicles last week, or just information about this incident in general, because obviously you took it on the chin there right away. Once this happened, there was a lot of backlash that even kind of came nationally from it, but departments seem to do a really good job of keeping everybody informed and getting the facts out there.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I'll address that too, that piece of it quickly, which is I'm still getting emails from people around the country, saying negative things about the Wausau Police Department because of this short video that was put out immediately by somebody that was near the scene of that shooting. And so I would just say I appreciate our community in terms of withholding judgment until the district attorney is able to put information out as to what transpired, so they understand the entirety of the incident. I think that's really, really important. And we have a supportive community. Our community is really supportive of law enforcement, and that goes a long way to helping the police officers involved in this incident cope. Because if there's additional scrutiny because of a lot of protests or negative comments coming in towards the police department, that takes a toll on a police officer. So I appreciate our community.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, of course, the community appreciates everything that your officers do on a daily basis as well, because it's not just incidents like this. There's so many things that even I don't hear about in the media that the officers deal with on a daily basis, whether it's say a domestic incident or just an argument that's beginning to escalate. I'm sure they see all kinds of those things on a daily basis.
Yeah, absolutely. And so this week we're having in-service with our police officers, and so part of that in-service is what we call our in-house session, and we talk about a lot of different things that are going on within the police department. But one of the things that I'm talking about is our annual awards banquet, which is coming up on March 9th here. So I think by the time this is played, that's the day this is going to play, and it's just a good reminder for me. We get a bunch of nominations for officers and different incidents that occurred, and it's really impressive the work that our police officers do day in and day out all year long. And this awards banquet is it's a great way to recognize the work that our police officers do, whether it's an award of valor, or whether it's a life-saving award. Of course, we have officers that have gone above and beyond the normal call of duty, and we get to recognize them. And so we have great police officers here. They really care about the community and the people that they're serving, and I'm really proud to be with the Wausau Police Department. I would do anything I could for any one of our staff here. They're unbelievable.
And one more thing we wanted to talk about was you're going through an accreditation process as well. Speaking of being proud of this department, I'm sure give us an idea of what this process is and what it could mean for the police department, or what kind of recognition it could bring.
Sure. Yeah, and so accreditation is there's an accrediting agency in Wisconsin. It's the Wisconsin Law Enforcement Accreditation Group, and so they create the standards that we are required to meet if we want to be accredited. And a lot of times if you think about hospitals or universities in terms of accreditation, and so you want a hospital to go through an accreditation process so that you're getting the best care, right? Or you want a university to have gone through an accreditation process so that that your degree actually matters and the education you're receiving means something, right? And that's what we're looking to do with the police department here. We were initially accredited back in December of 2016. We received our accreditation, and so this is a re-accreditation that we're looking to achieve here. And so the process is pretty intensive. We have staff here that have been working for months diligently on making sure that we meet the standards. And so there's over 600 standards that WILEAG requires us to meet in order to achieve accreditation. And so it happens every 3 years, and we have to prove that we've met all of those standards each of those 3 years. So if you think of a filing cabinet, we do it all electronically, but if you think of a filing cabinet, we've got 2017, 2018, and 2019 in there, and all of those 600 proofs, we have to prove that we've met those standards. Not just that we have the right policies, but that we actually follow the policy, because otherwise we can have a policy, but if we're not following it, it doesn't mean much, right?
Right.
So an example of that might be, we have to have a policy saying that we mandate seatbelt use in our squad cars, right? Which we do, but then we also have to show that we're actually wearing our seatbelts. So an example might be our officers wear body cameras. So you might have officer who is going out to a call and they're putting their camera on and it's caught on video. So you can put that clip into the file folder to show that, yep, we have officers that are wearing their seatbelts. And that's a very, very trivial example, but it is one example that we have to meet. So it could be anything from how are we responding to officer-involved shootings? How are we investigating and making sure that our pursuits are within policy? What is our pursuit policy? So all of those things we have to meet in order to get accredited. And we just want to make sure our community knows that we are following best practices, that we are a good law enforcement and professional law enforcement agency, and they can trust that the work that we do is meeting best standards within our profession. And that's what accreditation allows us to do and to achieve. When I first started at the Wausau Police Department 20 years ago, we had policies that were 10, 15, 20 years old. And that's not okay anymore, right? So our policies are frequently updated. They're regularly looked at and evaluated. When new case law comes in, our policies are updated to make sure they're in compliance with case law. And that's critically important for liability, but just to make sure that we're doing the right things.
Yeah, and again, making sure you've got that trust within the community. If the community is going to put their trust in you, it's a reciprocal relationship. It's got to be returned, whether it's asking for community help in cracking a certain case,
absolutely,
or in case of keeping us safe as well, right?
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. It definitely is. It's one thing that allows us to hold up as an example of we're doing the right things for the right reasons. And it's a challenging process. And like I said earlier, we have a fantastic team here, committed team. It's not easy work to be accredited. Less than 10% of law enforcement agencies are accredited, and we're one of them. So we're very proud of that, and we'll wear that badge proudly.
And when will you find out then about the latest round of accreditation?
Yeah, so the accreditors were here last week for 3 days, and they actually had 4 accreditors here going through all of our files, doing ride-alongs. They were actually over in the dispatch center because there's some policies with how we communicate on the radio. They were over in our human resources department to see how we track and maintain our employee files. So we should know probably by May whether or not we've achieved accreditation. We got a very good review at the end of the accreditation visit, so we have expectations that we will be accredited again.
And then you said 600 data points that they're looking at. Do you have to hit on a certain percentage of them? Is it, say, 550 out of 600, or is it all 600?
You have to hit every one.
Have to hit every one. So
yeah. So I mean, there might be some things that we haven't seen in a specific year. So there are years, of course, that we don't have officer-involved shootings, thankfully. So we don't have data points to show like, yep, we've met this standard. But when we do have officer-involved shootings, we have to hit that standard. So we have to do it the right way.
All right. Well, we'll look forward to seeing what comes out of that as well. Anything else that you'd like to add then before we let you go today?
No, I mean, I appreciate the opportunity to talk about some of the things that are going on here at the police department. Like I said before, it's really important to us that our community has faith and trust in us, and believes that we're here doing the right things for the right reasons. And that's why we try to be as outward facing as we can, and try to communicate as much as we can about things that are going on. So I appreciate this opportunity.
Yeah, and we appreciate you taking the time on short notice as well to chat as well. Again, Ben, we'll look forward to chatting in the near future as well, as I'm sure we will once or twice before the year's up.
Sounds good. Thank you.
All right.